Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to our Q4 DBE Joint Task Force Workshop. We'll give everyone a couple minutes to get logged in. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. I don't know about you, but the snowbirds seem to have come back to Phoenix. If you're in the Phoenix metro area, traffic is, I think, getting a little bit worse in the mornings, especially. All right, well, we get going. Again, we'll give everyone a minute or two to get logged in, get everything settled in. Please do use the chat to say hello. My name is Rebecca Morris with the Arizona Builders Exchange. I am your planning consultant on the DBE task force. Good morning. Love to see it. Yvette, good morning. Elizabeth, good morning. Everybody was in Las Vegas. I'm actually going there Thursday, so hopefully everybody will come back here by the time I go up there. So that's awesome. Good morning, Jermaine. It's great to see everyone. Please do you take the opportunity to introduce yourself, name, title, company in the chat. We love to see that. Good morning. Good morning. Be sure to check there's a little drop down. Make sure it goes to everyone. So if you want everyone to see your chat message, they can certainly do so. While we get going, I am going to do a little screen share here. We do have the Title 6. Yes, it is. I almost forgot my number there. Title 6 slides. I wanted to kind of slowly scroll through, give everyone a couple minutes to read this updated information. Our non-discrimination notice, and a couple more slides. There's always going to be a Spanish version of all of them, but really big information, contact information. So in case you ever needed to reach out to the ADOT External Civil Rights, here's the contact information down here with anything in regards to Title 6. And then Title 2, Americans with Disabilities Act or ADA Act. And same information in Spanish. And I have one more. All right. And then if we wanted to, there is a survey here. So in case you wanted to do the anonymous self-identification, you can certainly do so using the links in the slides here. So once we get going, either me or Alexa, if you're on, feel free to drop those into the chat for anybody who wants to take advantage of that. All right, with that, we're going to jump right into it. Good morning, good morning. Couple housekeeping notes. As you can see, if you have the chat window open, you can see everyone kind of chatting and good morning and greeting everyone. I love to see that. That's awesome. Thank you so much to everyone who's taking advantage of our virtual networking options. Big one. We have some really cool presentations today, some very detailed, very kind of behind the scenes. If you have any questions for our panelists, please do use the Q&A. So big difference between the chat and the Q&A. Q&A kind of holds it, right? Like if you think of a question you really want to ask, please do use that. We absolutely get to every question we can. If it's something we can't answer, we'll absolutely take your information and get back to you. But use the Q&A versus the chat. So the chat, we might lose it. I don't want to lose track of any questions. So if you do have any questions for our panelists, please do, again, use that Q&A function. And then second, all the slides will be distributed. So everything we see today, all the links, all the slides, everything's going to come to you after, as well as the recorded version of this DBE task force. So with that, I'd like to invite Vicki Murphy, our Chief Auditor with Audit and Analysis. Vicki, good morning.
Good
Thank you so much for
morning.
being here. I'm going to step into the background, and if you would like to take over and give us the behind the scenes look at Audit and Analysis.
All righty, we can do that. All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yep, you're coming in loud and clear.
Okay.
The screen shows perfectly.
All right, I got to do a little bit of adjustment here so that I can see what I'm doing. All right. So I was asked to talk about engineering overhead rates. And when you start talking about engineering overhead rates, basically what you're talking about is 23 CFR 172. And so I have wanted to provide a little bit of history on the 23 CFR 172. The question I was asked is why ADOT reviews professional service firms' billing rates. The answer is because 23 CFR 172 requires us to. But let's get into that a little bit more. Let's start out with some history. Initially in 1972, it was actually October 18th, the US Congress enacted the Brooks Act. And basically, what the Brooks Act said is that we are not supposed to be purchasing architecture and engineering services based on low bid. They wanted to make sure that the engineers that were designing the roads were qualified to do so, and we weren't going to go with the low bid option. And so prices cannot be used with that selection process. So that was what they enacted in 1972. Well, you come down a little bit later into 1991, they come up with the Intermodal Service Transportation Equity Act. And in there, FHWA started to delegate the responsibility of the architecture and engineering to the states, and provided the opportunity for states to use consultants as part of that responsibility. So this was a shift where prior to that, the states were held accountable, the states did all the work. And then in 1991, they're saying like, come on, we need to use consultants. So FHWA delegated to the states and said, you're responsible now, go do your thing. And the states were all excited and went out and did it. Well, then in 2008, the Governmental Accounting Office did an audit over the federal highway projects. And they found that the states were doing very poor oversight, were not managing the consultants. They were not properly looking at the overhead rates. In fact, the majority of the overhead rates that they audited were severely overstated and not in compliance with the Federal Register. And the costs were not supported by the when they pulled a sample from the firms. So we had a lot of issues there, and they came in and said, hey, this is unacceptable. So in 2008, they started working on how to address that. And it actually took until 2015 until they were able to actually publish the 23 CFR 172. And it was updated. Prior to that, it said the states were responsible, and that was it. In 23 CFR 172 in 2015, when it was updated, it came out and said exactly what the states are responsible for, and it put a lot more constraints on what the states can and can't do. And so that is what we're living under now. They clarified our responsibilities, and they provided an opportunity to do a risk-based approach rather than 100% review of all all the engineering. So 23 CFR 172 guides the procurement and management and administration of engineering and design related services. So it tells the states how we can procure them, what we need to do to manage them once we do procure them, and how we need to administer those design related services. So there's a bunch of do's and don'ts in there that are very specific. It requires the state DOTs to provide reasonable assurance that consultants' costs comply with federal principles. And so basically what it's telling us states is that when we're looking at all your bills and everything that the engineering firms are submitting, we have to provide reasonable assurance that that is accurate and that it complied with all the federal cost regulations. And if you understand the federal cost principles, they're very detailed and they're very difficult to understand. So this is a big lift if you're sitting there trying to make sure that everybody understands and is doing everything in accordance with that. And it required the state DOT to review billing rates as part of the contract negotiation process. So what happens at that point is each state had to come up with a process on how we were going to provide that reasonable assurance, how we were going to review those billing rates, and develop a process. And we had to create a guide that explained that. And then that had to be approved by federal highways prior to us initiating it. ADOT has created the Consultant Audit Guide. It provides guidance with respect to the audits and how audit is interrelating with engineering consulting services on how we audit at different points within the process. And so this consultant audit guide, here's a table of contents to kind of give you an idea of what you could find in there. And I have included the website to where you can find it on the internet. And this audit guide pretty much describes the process that we use. So First of all, we interface with the engineering firms as they're going through the bidding process, and that's when we're looking at the overhead rates to make sure the overhead rates are in compliance with the Federal Acquisition Register. And we provide a recommendation to engineering consulting services as whether to accept the rate or not accept the rate. And then at the back end, once a firm has has been billing the department, we come in and we do what's called an incurred cost audit. And at that point, that's when we're coming back in on the back end of it and saying, okay, you billed us for all of these. We go in and look for support behind those bills, and we make sure that the accounting records behind that support is in compliance with the federal requirements as far as accounting for and tracking costs. So that is the two touch points where internal audit gets involved with the processes at ADOT. So the next question I was asked is, what are the different limits that trigger a cost price review, unit rate versus indirect cost rate? And to start there, there's 4 different payment methods that we can use when we're doing the consulting engineering contracts. And this is based on 23 CFR 172. The first one is a lump sum method. And this is where we know exactly what the project's going to be, exactly the complexity, the scope, the character, duration of work, everything that's required for a project. We negotiate a price and we say, you're going to complete this whole project for X amount of dollars. That's it. We don't look at anything beyond that. We pay them that amount and they finish the project. Sometimes the consultant takes more than that. Sometimes the consultant takes less than that. But the specific requirement with lump sum is you have to know the exact extent of the scope and the project work to be done. So you can't do it if there's unknowns. The next one is specific rates of compensation. And this can only be used when it is impossible to estimate the extent or duration of the work with any accuracy or degree. And so you establish a specific rate of compensation, and then we monitor how that contract is going and pay them as the process goes forward. Then there's cost per unit worked, and this is what we call unit cost rates. And the other one is the cost plus fixed fee. It is up to each state to identify which one of these they're going to do. There's a lot of states that only do cost plus fixed fee. And for new DBEs and those, they have what they call a safe harbor indirect cost rate that can be used. They have it at a set rate. And that's what the new firm gets for the first couple of years until they get a chance to establish themselves and figure out exactly how to go through the process. And then they have to have their own audited rate or accurate rate at that point. Not all states require audits, and that's a different thing that's also in here as to at what point triggers those audits. The other option is the cost per unit work. And in ADOT, what we have come up with, and just as a side note, you can have a contract that is all 4 of these payment methods in one. The cost per unit work under ADOT rules is consultants receiving less than $200,000 in payments during the prior or current year can use the unit cost rate. So what we've done is these are for the entry-level people that are starting in the system. They're doing small projects for us. We're not requiring them to do the indirect cost rate. We're just requiring them to do a unit rate. What happens with the unit rate is it comes into audit, we look at it, we compare it to the same type of services that we had from other consultants and look to see how reasonable it is given what the type of service is. It may also be required when a consultant proposes commercial items or have not been in operation for a full calendar year, so they're unable to come up with an indirect cost rate. We will allow them to do a unit cost rate for their first year. So those are the 2 scenarios that we've been approved for using the unit cost rates. When you move to indirect cost rates, there's several requirements within the 23 CFR 172. One is that it has to be updated on an annual basis in accordance with the annual accounting period and compliance with the federal cost principles. So you have to create it annually and it has to comply with federal cost principles. The requirements from the state's perspective is there's 5 different ways that we can accept that indirect cost rate. One is a cognizant audit. That means a state or federal agency goes in and actually audits the engineering firm and says, yep, this is the rate. The other way that we can do that is if you have a CPA audited rate. So a CPA comes in and audits your indirect cost rate. We can go in and review the work papers of that CPA firm and make sure that they did the audit in accordance with the AASHTO audit guide and accounting principle and auditing principles. And then we then send a letter that says we agree with and concur with this rate, and that becomes a cognizant rate. The advantage with the cognizant audit is then it is once you have that cognizant audit rate, that must be used by every state DOT. There, no exception. So if you have that, if you work based out of here and we do a cognizant review of your audit, we can then you go do work in Oregon, they have to accept the rate. There's no question about it. So from our perspective in audit, if you come in with a cognizant audit rate, we review it, confirm that it is in fact truly a cognizant audit rate, and we just tell engineering services, this is the rate you have to charge. That's it, no exceptions. The next one is a reviewed audit report, and that's where you get a CPA audit to audit your indirect cost rate, and then audit just reviews that audit report based on our experience level with the auditing firm and questions that we may ask the auditing firm. We then say, okay, we recommend accepting this rate. The other option within the 23 CFR is that we evaluate on a risk-based process. So we look at the risks involved with the firm, and based on that level of risk, we decide how much work we need to do over that indirect cost rate. So sometimes if you have an audit, the audit firm is great, you're at low risk, we don't do as much work on our end. The next option is that we actually go out and perform an audit over your indirect cost rate. That's very time intensive for us, and it makes it very delayed for the engineering firm to get their rate approved for any of the negotiation process. And then the last one is establishing a provisional indirect cost rate. That used to be the method that we did. And what happens there is you present your rate, we establish it in your contract as a provisional rate, and then at the end of the year, you come up with your true rate, and then you have to do what they call a true up, where either if your rate was lower than the estimate, you have to pay us back. If your rate was higher than the estimate, we have to pay you, and it goes back and forth. Within 23 CFR 172, if we do the provisional indirect cost rates, which is what we used to do, prior to closing that contract, audit is required to go in and do 100% audit of the work you did. So that's very labor intensive on our end. And that's why ADOT has moved away from there. And the approach that we have within the consultant audit guide, if you look through it, is to evaluate with a risk-based oversight process. So that's where we have, if you're less than $200,000, we let you do unit rates. If you're over that, you have to do an indirect cost rate. Over a certain dollar amount, I think it's $1 million, you have to have an audited rate where you have to have a CPA do the work. When the rate comes into audit, we do a risk analysis on your indirect cost rate. We look at your schedule. We look for things that are not allowable typically within the Federal Acquisition Register, and then we rate you as high, medium, or low. If we decide that you're high risk, then we require an audited rate before we move forward. And if you already have an audited rate, then we require a cognizant review of the work papers of that audit. So there's some different levels there. If you're a low level, we do some preliminary, we recalculate your rate, we make sure that it looks good, and then we just pass it on and say, hey, we recommend that you accept this rate. So it's all based on risk, and we have some factors that we have to consider, and those are actually in the consultant audit guide describing exactly what we consider when we do that risk-based analysis. So the next question I was asked is, what can a professional services firm do to prepare for transitioning from unit rate to indirect cost rates? And the biggest thing that you can do is get a good understanding of the Federal Acquisition Register cost principles. That's understanding what is allowable, what isn't allowable. And you have to have a good understanding of cost accounting standards. So that's where you're discussing the different pools of money and how you allocate it. When you're looking at the elements of a contract cost, there's 4 different elements. There's the indirect cost rate, there's the direct salaries or wages, and then there's other direct costs and fixed fees. So you have to have an accounting system that tracks those 4 different buckets and allocates within those buckets. So if you have a cost, the first question is it a project cost or is it an indirect cost rate? It's a project cost. Is it an allowable project cost or is it an unallowable project cost? So within the project costs that are allowable, you have to have a bucket for labor and a bucket for direct costs. Then you have to have those project unallowable costs. Again, within those unallawables, you have to have a bucket that tracks the labor and then also the direct costs. So what are the project unallowable costs? Those are the things that, let's say the contract didn't allow for any printing and you had printing associated with the job. You would put that in the project unallowable cost because that was a cost of the project that wasn't allowable per that contract. Another example of the project unallawables would be if the contract was for 100,000 or well, we'll say $1 million and you spent $1,100,000. That extra $100,000 has to go in the bucket called project unallowable so that it was a project cost. It is not allowed as an indirect cost rate at that point. That's over on your other side of the business and it can't be part of your indirect costs. If the cost is an indirect cost, you need to determine if it's an allowable indirect cost or not. And so you have to have a bucket for indirect costs that are allowable and a bucket for indirect costs that are unallowable. And so your accounting system needs to be able to accommodate all these different buckets. One of the things is a lot of new firms are using QuickBooks. You can do this in QuickBooks, but it really isn't easy. So you might need to be looking for a little bit more sophisticated accounting system, or you might want to hire an accountant to come in and help you set up those buckets within QuickBooks. But like I said, it's very difficult to do it within that system. So once you have your costs all in all of these buckets, what kind of documentation is required and is there a checklist that can be provided? The first thing is you have to make sure that you are following 23 CFR 172. And basically it says allowable costs are eligible if they are compliant with the federal cost principles. So that's your first part of the checklist is making sure that you understand what is allowable within the federal cost principles. And then part 2 of that says that the consultant is responsible for for accounting for those costs appropriately and for maintaining records, including supporting documentation adequate to demonstrate that the costs claim have been incurred, are allowable to the contract, and comply with federal cost principles. So that is ultimately what is the responsibility of the consultant. So you need to have support documentation behind every one of those charges in those different buckets, and you need to be able to demonstrate why you put them in the bucket you put them into. And so is it allocable to the contract and does it comply with federal cost principles? And if it isn't eligible for a project, is it an allowable indirect cost or is it an unallowable indirect cost? As far as finding a checklist, I really couldn't find one, but I went into the actual 23 CFR, and these are some things that they have identified as a properly designated system. You would have proper segregation of direct costs and indirect costs. You'd have identification and accumulation of direct costs by cost objective or contract, a logical or consistent method for allocating those indirect costs to intermediate and final cost objectives. You would have an accumulation of those costs in your general ledger. You would have a timekeeping system that identifies employee labor by intermediate and final cost objectives. So you would have a system that would say, this is the project they worked on, how many hours they worked on it. This is when they worked on administrative costs that would go to indirect cost pool. And so you would actually have a good timekeeping system to be able to do that. You would have a labor distribution system that charges direct and indirect labor to the appropriate cost areas. And then at least monthly, a determination of cost charged to a contract through routine posting to your books. You would have exclusion from cost charged to government agreements for the amounts that are not allowable per FAR. So that was that little unallowable bucket that I talked about. And you would have an identification of cost by appropriate unit if required by the contract. So that's some basic checklist items that you could do to make sure that you're compliant with the requirements under 23 CFR 172. When it comes to audit, we come in, we visit with you, we look at your accounting records, we help educate you on areas that you didn't do it quite right. We are here to help. We aren't necessarily here to bang you over the head, but we're trying to do our job to make sure we comply with 23 CFR 172 and that the department is in compliance with the audit guide that you see that I provided the link for. And so that pretty much concludes my official or scheduled presentation. Now I'm going to open it up for any questions that anybody may have. Oh, you're asking me a specific FAR question. Okay, so the question was you were that we cannot include depreciation in our overhead rate calculation. But you believe it's allowed to include straight line depreciation in the calculation, but not excess depreciation. Can you clarify this for me? I am going to have to pull open the FAR on that one. That's the interesting thing with the FAR is there are all kinds of exceptions. So give me a second. Is there another question that I can answer easier? Anybody else have any questions?
Vicki, I think we're just going to ask you the tough ones. I think all the easy ones were kind of answered in your presentation. I know I had one written down, but then you answered it the very
I
next
answered it.
slide.
Okay.
Okay, so then we do have another question in the chat. The question to you, Vicki, is there a quick checklist of things typically allowable versus unallowable?
You know, in the audit guide, one of the things is in AASHTO. I'm going to put this in the chat. Here is the AASHTO website, and they do have an audit guide that you can purchase. I think it's like $15 or $20, some nominal fee. And in the back of that accounting guide, it does have a table of allowable and unallowable charges on the high level. So, some of them are a maybe, and then you have to actually go read the Federal Acquisition Register for it. I could potentially pull that out and send it to Rebecca for sending out with this presentation. I can do that for you.
I appreciate that. All right, I don't see, oh, here we go. There's actually one other one in the Q&A.
In the Q&A.
So question over here, we have been providing the City of Phoenix our overhead calculations utilizing their spreadsheet. Has ADOT reviewed that spreadsheet or is it ADOT compliant? Are you familiar with the
I am not familiar with the City of Phoenix overhead rate calculations. I would hope that it was compliant with ADOT. I have not seen that. If you send it to me, Anne, I would be willing to look at it. My email is vmurphy@azdot.gov. If you send it to me, I would take a quick glance at it and be able to give you an opinion back.
Okay, I'm dropping your email in the chat real quick.
Okay.
vmurphy@azdot.gov. Perfect.
Yes.
All right, those are good questions. I love that our attendees today saved the hard ones for you.
I know. I wasn't prepared for that kind of question. And it's interesting. I I worked for 15 years with Montana Department of Transportation as their chief auditor before I moved up down here to Arizona. And I probably look up Federal Acquisition Register and the cost principles at least once every other week.
Really.
So at least twice a month, I'm actually having to pull it up and look at it because it is so complex. It's really, really difficult to know the answers off the top of your head because of that. So I was looking
And
here
that's
to,
why we need people like you. So to be a principal, to see people like you who know it very well and who live it and do it every day,
and it's not
incredibly
one of those
helpful.
things where I know it, I know where to look it up. Um,
That is much more
so
important.
depreciation on a contractor's plant equipment and other capital facility is allowable contract costs, subject to limitations contained in the cost principle. So for tangible property, only estimated residual values are allowed. Let's see, depreciation for contracts that it's not applied except in paragraphs G and H. Allowable depreciation should not exceed the amount used for accounting purposes and shall be determined in a manner consistent with depreciation policies and procedures followed in the same segment of the non-government business. So that's saying that you have to have a policy in place as to how you're going to do depreciation, and you need to be following that policy is one of the criteria that's required. You're not allowed to do any depreciation on fully depreciated by the contractor already. And then you have to follow the CAS requirements, so the cost accounting requirements in order to do that. Let's see, in the event the contractor requires a lease arrangement, allowable depreciation of the reacquired property shall be based on the net book value. So the depreciation thing is about a page long. Did that help? It wasn't a
Somewhat,
great, easy
this is
answer.
well out of my area of anything. But
So
it was
again,
disgusting.
it's
Thank you.
yeah, it's very dependent, um, but it needs to be a reasonable depreciation, and it can't see. And there's some requirements there. If it's tangible property or leased property, there's some different rules that need to be followed as well.
Okay.
Yep, that's the answer. It's allowable, but it depends. And
I
that's what
think,
90% of the Federal Acquisition Register is.
oh,
So that, I mean, all of it is, it's a very if and there but type things.
conditional
Yeah. So
everything.
for example, bonuses are allowable if there's a written policy. It's not based on profit. And there's a whole list of things that have to be met in order for bonuses to be allowable. So yes, they're allowable, but it depends on if you have all these other factors in place.
Vicki, we have a new question over in the Q&A. The
Okay.
question is, if we are the prime on a contract with a larger firm as a sub whose rates are higher, are those rates scrutinized and capped at what the smaller firm's rates should be?
They are not capped at the smaller firm's rate, but they still need to follow all of the rules and be reviewed by audit to make sure that their rate is acceptable.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Vicki. All right. I would say last call for questions to Vicki. All right. If nothing else, Vicki, thank you so much. This was insightful
Welcome.
and a little intimidating to me as somebody who doesn't deal with audits or anything else.
Yeah, and just remember that we're here to help you. We're not here to kill you. We're trying to do this as a good balance between the two. And simple, if you have questions over specific depreciation and stuff, just give me an email and I'll do my best to give you the if, ands, and buts and ors.
All the conditions and, if this, then that. No, I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah.
All right.
If
Vicki,
then statements.
certainly. And like you said, you know where to look. So
I know where to look
hopefully,
and I can refer you to the thing. And I will also pull that quick guide and put it in a format that we can send out as part of the presentation.
excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. And I would say to our audience, if you do think of any questions, because Usually I think of questions about 20 minutes after something ends. Please do drop it in the Q&A and we will make sure if Vicky's able to stay on, maybe she can type in answer. If not, we can always email it and get back a written answer. And maybe the direction again on like where to look, because so many of these questions are going to be so dependent or conditional, if this then that. So, all right, Vicky, I will invite you to turn your camera off and your microphone off. Thank you so much. And Shiva, next up, we will invite Shiva Thunder, Senior Transportation Engineer, Team Leader for Contracts and Specifications Group. Shiva, we would love to hear from you. Can you kind of take us behind the curtain on contracts and specifications? I will step into the background. Shiva, take it away.
Sure. Thank you, Rebecca. And that was a great presentation, Vicky. Thanks for passing it over to me. Let me share my screen. Is everybody able to see my screen here?
We are able to see it. Looks great.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm here to give you a brief overview of the ADOT Contracts and Specification Group website. That's what I was actually asked to present to you all, because it has a lot of information, a lot of modules, like 10 or 11 modules. So basically, this presentation is going to be all about where to find what on the Contracts and Specifications Group's website. Okay. So prior to exploring this website of ours, it's very important for us to understand what CNS is, ADOT Contracts and Specifications Group is, and what it does, so that we can relate to the information provided on this website. So moving on, what is Contracts and Specifications Group? Basically, CNS operates under the directions of the ADOT Deputy State Engineer for Contracts and the Project Review Board. And the Contracts and Specification Group's functionalities adheres to several policies and procedures, including but not limited to the Title 23 United States Code, Federal Highway Administration's Federal Aid Policy Guide, FHWA and ADOT Stewardship and Oversight Agreement for Arizona, several Arizona revised statutes for bids for construction, regulatory provisions for public works, statutes for registration, and the Arizona Administrative Code for pre-qualification of the contractors. And who are our customers? As you can see on this slide, the contents of the CNS website mainly caters to the ADOT's State Engineer's Office and all ADOT personnel, FHWA Arizona Division, local agencies, cities, towns, counties, other state agencies, contractors, subcontractors, vendors, suppliers, and general public, the State Attorney General's Office, associations such as AGC, ACEC, ARPA, and management and design consultants. So what are our customers typically looking out for on our website? In other words, the major documents and reports created or processed by Contracts and Specifications Group that are hosted on our websites are actually shown here on this slide. First and foremost, the most important set of documents for developing a legally binding contract for any project that's being advertised is the standard specifications for road and bridge construction. We'll go over these and how to find these on our website in the later part of our presentation, but it's good to know now as to what these what are all the documents, critical important documents that we make it available on our website. So the standard specifications for road and bridge construction and its associated stored specifications, along with the master list of approved bid items, are made available on our website. And then a list of pre-qualified contractors, in other words, the prime contractors who are pre-qualified by ADOT with ADOT to be able to bid on a given ADOT construction contract that's advertised. And then once a contract is being advertised, the pertinent contract documents, the sealed special provisions, plans, and other project documents are also made available on the contracts and specifications website. Following that, the same project, when it is basically being opened, and after it is being opened, the bid results of a given contract is also made available. And when the same project that's opened is basically going to the transportation board for award, after the project's award, the tabulation of bid agreement estimates, or in other words, the bid tabulation document, is also made available to the public. In addition to these, a few other critical information, including a list of pre-qualified contractors, is also published on our website. And ADOT Contracts and Specification Group also tracks the cost fluctuations and the inflations, based on the bids received on recently concluded and awarded projects. And ADOT establishes the construction cost index based on that information, and that is also a public information available on ADOT E2C2. So that ADOT's construction cost index is also available on our website, and it is based off of the data all the way from 2016 onwards, and CNS maintains it on a quarterly basis. So there are numerous responsibilities of Contracts and Specifications Group, but for the purposes of this presentation and to relate this better to when we explore our website, I just have condensed it into a couple of slides. Why CNS? What is the main functionality? One of the main functionality of CNS. Okay, as you can see in this slide, based on a 2021 White House article, when the basic economic theory demonstrates that when firms have to compete for customers, it leads to lower prices and high quality goods. So when this economic theory relates to ADOT and its construction program, a good bidding environment is very critical for any given construction project that's being advertised. And CNS is in charge of organizing and facilitating this bidding process, in addition to all the other functionalities and responsibilities it has. This is one of the main critical important functions of Contracts and Specifications Group. And how does that CNS achieve that? Yeah, by making sure that the contract documents, legally binding contract documents that are published on CNS website for any given project that's advertised, is clear, complete, consistent, concise, correct, risk-free contract. And this is ensured through detailed investigations and strong analysis by Contracts and Specifications. And ultimately, this is with a single motive to increase the plan holders' confidence in order to be able to bid on a given advertised contract. And for those who are familiar with plan holders, that's great. The term plan holders, that's great. But for those who want to know what plan holder means, plan holders are nothing but pre-qualified contractors who are interested in bidding on a given advertised contract. That's the term plan holders refers to. So this is a basic condensed version of an introduction that's probably going to be helpful for when we look into our website. So the next few slides until the end of this presentation is we're going to dive into each and every module and tab of the CNS website and see what is what and where to find some critical information that some of y'all might be looking to see and find on the CNS website. So the first, I want to touch upon this part of the CNS website. So we do have a tab for that provides information about the pre-qualified contractors. So a contractor has to be pre-qualified with ADOT to be able to bid on ADOT construction projects. So for this, firstly, a contractor would have to submit the application for contractor pre-qualification. And this application can be found on the CNS website main page. Let me open the website. Here we go. So if you do see here on the main web page, contracts and specifications web page, there is a link to download the application for contractor pre-qualification. And I just want to touch upon a few important facts on getting a firm or a company pre-qualified with ADOT to be able to bid on ADOT construction projects. So firstly, all persons, firms desiring to offer bids on construction work advertised by the department must first make an application for pre-qualification, which is submitting this application for ADOT to evaluate and approve, make a decision. And then the critical aspects that we'll be looking out for is the contractor's experience, organization's details, and other pertinent and material facts. So the timeline is pre-qualification applications may be filed with the department at any time, provided that the date of filing is at least 15 calendar days prior to a proposed bid opening date of the work on which the contractor seeks to bid. So say, for example, if we are opening a construction contract on December 20th, and a contractor who's not pre-qualified would want to be able to bid on this project because they are very much interested, on this project, then they should actually submit an application no later than probably this Thursday, December 5th. Okay, so that gives us good amount of time to review and evaluate and provide a decision with regards to whether the contractor who's interested in bidding on that project is going to be pre-qualified or not. Okay, so that's one critical thing to take into consideration. And then when a contractor is pre-qualified, okay, as a prime contractor to be able to bid on ADOT construction projects, that application will be considered valid for 15 months from the date of financial statement. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the critical things that we will need to find in this application is the contractor's experience, prior experience, all the licensing information, and the equipment, and the corporation evidence of authority contact information. Okay, these are the things that we will be looking at to evaluate prior to making a decision about the pre-qualification. There is a lot more information, and again, that can be found in this application, and it is available on the CNS main webpage. Okay, so also before moving on to the next set of modules, this tab, pre-qualified contractors tab, when you click on it, you'll be able to find all the pre-qualified contractors with that have been arranged in alphabetical order. So say, for example, if you click on the alphabet B, you'll find the list of contractors with their name starting with B, and what is the work type that they are pre-qualified to perform. So say, for example, if we advertise a contract that predominantly has a lot of flat work like sidewalk, curb and gutter, and underground construction work, then this prime contractor, if interested on pursuing that project to be able to place a bid, they could actually register themselves as a plan holder for this project, because these are the work types that this contractor is pre-qualified to perform on ADOT projects. Okay, so moving on. All right, so this one, secondly, I want to show you several tabs one after another. It's more like a relay race, okay, because they are all related to one single bidding process. Okay, as you can see on the slide, the project's design life cycle has several phases. So first it is planned and programmed, and then the design development phase begins, and it's basically split into several stages. And once the stage 5 is completed, that means that the project's design is 100% complete and it is ready to be advertised. Okay, So from the time of completion of this design phase to the time the construction begins, that's typically a 2 to 4 to 6 month timeline, and it varies from project to project. Okay, this is the time when the CNS website hosts this project, by providing a lot of project information and the pertinent contract documents applicable to the project on the website. And there are several tabs during different times within this 2 to 6 or 7 month period that this project information gets transferred to. Okay, so let's go over one tab after another and see what information can be found where. Okay, so again, I'm going to bring the CNS website here. Give me 1 second. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so the first and foremost, we have a tool here that the designers and consultants can actually use when they are designing this contract, and that is estimating contract time guidelines. Okay, so contract time is one of the most essential part of a contract, and so we have a document that gives information about average anticipated production rates for common construction activities. So the contractor, the consultants can actually use this as a go-to tool to get some information and insight about what is the typical production rate and productivity that is anticipated for a given type of work item in a given location, and come up with a contract time for a given project. Now, once the project's design is complete, all the legal documents are all procured by contracts and specifications group, and then the contracts and specifications group advertises the project. So on the day of the advertisement, in the current advertisements tab of the website, the first thing is, as soon as the project is advertised, the project is going to show up on this website, and one row is going to be completely dedicated to the construction project. Okay, and as you can see here, there are several projects that are currently being advertised which are yet to be subject to bid opening. Okay, so say for example, this project tracks number, project number, with the approved bid opening date is all going to be showing up here on this website. Okay, so another thing important to notice, if we are on the lookout to see what this project is all about, what are the contractual requirements, when you click on this yellow icon in a given row, all the documents, contract documents and the associated project documents for the reference of interested parties is made available by contracts and specifications group here, and these are the ones that have been subject to all phases of design, and the complete design elements can be found in these
Shiva, I think we lost you. You've kind of gone frozen on us. Can you hear us okay? Nope. Shiva, if you can hear me, if you pause your video, if you stop your video, maybe that will free up enough bandwidth. All right, we'll give Shiva another minute or two. I will ask, oh, I think we lost him completely. So I will ask Ada, either Lorena or Alexa, if you can reach out to Shiva, see if we can maybe get reconnected. I'm guessing he will log right back in.
Yes, I am currently in contact with Shiva.
Oh, perfect. Haven't had that happen in a long time. I remember the early days of COVID where bandwidth was very constrained. So we had a lot of very poor connections while everybody was reacclimating to a virtual delivery. All right, so if anyone has any questions that they've thought of so far, looking at future opportunities, looking at project opportunities, that's very much what I get excited about. ADOT is one of our largest, public owners in the state. So always tons of opportunity. It's really interesting to see like how projects move through the process.
Hi, Rebecca. Shiva is rejoining momentarily.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, well, we'll just take a quick pause here. I'll keep my camera on just so everybody knows we're still connected and still live on this webinar. All right, well, I am not into entertaining. I'm a very poor entertainer. But if anybody wants to drop, oh, Shiva, I saw you.
Yep.
I was just about to have to start telling
I'm
jokes,
back.
and that was going to be really, really bad. So, Shiva, good to see you. Thank you for reconnecting so quickly.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry for that inconvenience. Yeah, I'm back. Let me share my screen again.
Oh, let me.
I just kept talking, and I didn't know where the connection got lost. But just wanted to check if.
So we were on the current advertisements page,
Okay.
and you had opened up the yellow folder, and you were showing the contract documents.
Okay. Got it.
And I think that's kind of where it went.
Yep.
You froze on us there.
Okay. So
all right, and I just want to say, Shiva,
again,
thank you for not making any. I'm looking at the list right now. I see no bids due between Christmas and New Year's. So I just want to say thank you, because I consider that like a major faux pas. Like that's a bah humbug move to make any kind of big construction project bids due between Christmas and New Year's. Like, man,
Right.
that's mean. So thank you for that. I'm sure that was absolutely your decision. And Shiva, I will step back into the background and have you resume.
Sure. Thank you. All right. So we were here where so this yellow icon is where you can find all of the contract documents, including the project plans and bid book and other project documents that are made available, such as the geotechnical reports or earthwork report that will be helpful for the contractors, to review prior to placing a bid on the given advertised contract. Okay. So another important thing is if you would want to get yourself registered as an interested prime contractor to be to be able to bid on this project, or a subcontractor or any other interested party to see if there are any contractual revisions, so that you get notified of any addendums that are being issued. You can click on this register button and sign yourself up and register yourself as a potential bidder or a subcontractor vendor or other. So this way you get involved and get to know about that project and the changes that happen to the contract that is planned to be opened. Also, I wanted to point out that anybody who is getting themselves registered as a subcontractor or a vendor or a prime contractor, their information is also going to be showing up here as soon as they have been approved, to be a subcontractor or a prime contractor on the same website. And this is again a public information that's going to be helpful for the interested parties. All right. So once this project is advertised, it's going to be here, showing up, having all its project documents for probably about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, depending on when we decide to have a bid opening for this particular project. Okay. So for any given project. Okay. So let's take this project. If this project F031901C's bid opening is January 17th, 2025, right? So on January 17, 2025, 11 o'clock is typically the bid opening. Okay. So as soon as the bids are publicly read out loud at 11 o'clock, around 11 o'clock or so, all the project information and the project data that you see on the current advertisements website will be removed. Okay. And the same project information is going to show up here under the As Read Bid Results tab. Okay. So on January 17th, you're going to see a row here for the same project F031901C. And the only information that is going to show up here is what are the results of this particular project, of the particular project F031901C. So say, for example, here this project was opened on November 22nd. So after 11 o'clock on November 22nd, this data will be updated by Contracts and Specifications Group and made available to the public. And it's in addition to the bidders information and the bid totals that we actually saw for this particular project, it will also have the department's estimate or department's anticipated construction cost for the same given project here too listed. Then this As Read Bid Results tab will hold the project's bid results for a period of time until this project is taken to the Transportation Board for its decision whether to be awarded or to be rejected. Okay, so once a project is awarded, the same project's information is going to be transferred to the bid tabulations tab. And the project's information will show up here in a given row. And what is going to be made available by CNS following the project award is a detailed document that gives you the bid tabulation information. Okay, and this is going to show what is the apparent low bidder and the other bidders bid amount, and how does that compare apparent low bidders amount compare with the department's estimate, and every item, what is the department's estimate, what was the anticipated department's estimate, as opposed to what is the bid that we received for all given items included in the bid schedule for a given project, that was bid on by all the contractors who placed their bids. So this information is going to be showing up here in the bid tabulations. And then the last tab that is related to this bidding process I wanted to let you all know is this electronic bidding. And this is most likely a go-to or a know-how kind of a thing where it has some instructions as to how to be able to download and what software needs to be downloaded by the contractor to be able to place a bid electronically, and also some contact information as CNS contact information is also provided here in case if there are any issues in electronically placing a bid. Feel free to give us a call, and Contracts and Specifications will be able to help you figure that out. All right, so this is so we are pretty much over 50 to 60% of our presentation. So moving on, the next tab I wanted to explain to you is this bituminous and fuel price adjustment tab. So one other information provided by CNS website and is used predominantly during the construction is the bituminous and fuel price adjustment. So for me to explain this better, any project that uses asphalt binder, and all projects, of course, have fuel, the use of fuel in one way or another. We include a specification such as this, and this I have highlighted a sentence, and that's paragraphs, and that's very important for us to understand what these are. So the price of the bituminous fuel will be determined monthly by the department based on selling prices published by Asphalt Weekly Monitor. So that's where the data comes from. A publication of Porten and Partners Inc. This price will be the arithmetic average of high and low selling prices for bituminous material shown in previous 4 reports for the Arizona, Utah, and the Southern California regions. Okay, so when you go and look at this website for bituminous and price adjustment, we are on a monthly basis. We provide a price, and for this month it is $508. Now, this price will be used for adjusting the asphalt binder price on the projects that are going to be opened the following month, and on all projects that are under the construction which have asphalt binder as it's being used on a given project. Okay, so this is something that contracts and specifications does and updates on a monthly basis. Again, source data and historical information also is available here on this website. So next one I wanted to share with you all is the construction cost index tab. CNS also studies the cost trend based on the bids received on ADOT construction contracts and prepares this ADOT's construction cost index. CCI it's a very common tool. It's an index intended to measure the average changes in highway construction costs over time. And the methodology that ADOT uses is the Chained Fisher Ideal Index CCI methodology. And one of the main reasons for us to transition and start using this Chained Fisher Ideal Index is FHWA uses the same. Okay, and how do we using the data that is available from the bids that historical bid information, how do we compute the CCI? The information is actually available on the FHWA's website, and we use that same exact methodology to compute ADOT's CCI. Okay, based off of the data that is observed on ADOT's projects. It's perfectly in alignment and in sync. The methodology wise, whatever FHWA uses for calculating the nationwide construction cost index, the same methodology is basically what we use for computing the ADOT's CCI as well. This is one of the most important modules of the CNS website. It's the specifications and the pay items list. So this CNS hosts the ADOT standard specifications for road and bridge construction, its associated stored specifications, and the master list of approved pay items. So a very quick insight into how these specifications that are used in construction contracts are standardized. Okay, I wanted to throw light on that. ADOT has an approving body called ADOT Standards Committee for all standards, ADOT standards and specifications. And under ADOT Standards Committee, there are 5 subcommittees, namely the Bridges and Structures Subcommittee, Contract Administration, Materials, Roadway Engineering, and the Traffic Subcommittee, okay, that work with the contractors and the designers in reviewing and updating the specifications so that they can be used on ADOT construction contracts. So one such subcommittee is the Contract Administration Subcommittee, which is responsible to create new and revise existing specifications that related to general contract provisions. So CNS Group Manager is the group manager sponsor for the CA subcommittee, and our CNS Standards Engineer is the subcommittee's chairperson. So just taking a quick look at this website module, you can find the latest version of the 2021, latest version of the standard specifications for road and bridge construction, which is the 2021 edition. We call it as the Red Book because the hard copies are also available for purchase. Okay, and online we have the PC version available for free download, and also the tablet version is available, and the associated stored specification is also available through the zip folder here, as you can see on this website. And as I mentioned earlier, the master approved pay items list that can be used by the designers to develop the bid schedule for any given advertised contract can also be found here. In addition to that, we also have some tools like tips for preparing the specifications that the designers may find it helpful in writing and developing the special provisions for a given contract. And finally, we also have the slightly older version. We used to call it the Blue Book, the 2008 version of the standard specifications for road and bridge construction for the public's reference. So moving on to the next slide. So I want to, close out my presentation with explaining about a few extra modules that we have available on the CNS website. So one of the modules is the future project. So this is something that contracts and specifications group work with other groups such as ADOT project management group, and we compile the information of what are the projects that are expected to be advertised in the next 1 or 2 quarters, and we develop a list with the pertinent project information and publish it in a tabular format on this tab, future projects list. And this is going to be helpful for some of the contractors to plan their future, what projects they are interested, what project they potentially would want to bid, and things of that nature, and when is that project going to be advertised. All that information can be found on this tab. And finally, the last tab is the current alternate delivery projects tab, and this has project information for on of the projects that are not advertised through the conventional design bid build contracting methodology. So projects that follow the design build contracting methodology, CMAR, P3 project, all the project information, the contracts and specifications group makes it available under that module as well. So finally, on the CNS main webpage, we also have some related links to other entities that the public may find it useful to access. So this is pretty much what CNS hosts through its website. Finally, I just wanted to conclude by thanking you all for giving me this opportunity to introduce or make the contracts and specifications group website familiar to those who are attending this presentation. Thank you for your time.
Shiva, thank you so much. I actually do have one question. Would you be able to pull up your future projects
Yes.
webpage? That's, to me, kind of the most interesting page is, what work is coming.
Sure. Let me, yep, here we go. Yep.
Okay, so I have a question for you on this page. Because it's on the contracts and specs, if it's on this list, does that automatically mean it is a traditional design bid build project? Because the approach as a sub between like an alternative APDM project pursuit versus a low bid is very different.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Yes. It's very typical. All of these projects are going to be the traditional design bid build, following the traditional design bid build contracting methodology. Yes.
Okay, perfect. So that's all low bid.
Yes, and they are construction projects because typically we don't actually rope in the procurement projects, because that goes through a different domain. It's a contracts and specification group. Any project that goes out of the doors of contracts and specification group is ADOT construction projects. So we make sure to review to the best of our ability this list, so that this list only includes ADOT's construction projects and make it available here. Again, these bid advertisement dates are tentative and they are subject to change depending on the state where this project is with regards to its design, and if there are any unforeseeable risks that is being encountered during the design phase, it may push, or sometimes it may be advanced. And also these dates are tentative, but this is overall giving a good picture for the contractors to plan.
Perfect. We appreciate that. Being able to plan is very important. And then just to clarify, fiscal year versus calendar year, are we in fiscal year 25? Did that take effect July 1st, 2024 to June 30, 2025? Okay.
ADOT's fiscal year is from July to June. Yes. And we are in fiscal year 2025.
So we're in the second quarter of fiscal year 2025 with ADOT. Is that correct?
That is true. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So this is something, thank you for pointing it out. This is something that I will make sure that we actually update it. Okay. Yeah, that's a typo here. But yes, this is basically fiscal year 2025 that we are in.
I didn't even notice that one, but thank you. I was more looking at the table.
Well, this question actually made me notice that. But again, thank you so much. Yeah, I'll ensure that this gets updated.
Perfect. Okay. And how often does this page get updated? Is it something that's dynamic that, every time a project gets updated, it will update, or is it more like the PDFs that I saw that had like a very specific, this was updated. I saw one that was updated at October 18th.
Yeah, it's typically not dynamic. This is one of the modules where we provide the information and it gets updated on a quarterly basis. So we try to work with other groups, get the information, and try to ensure that this module is maintained and updated on a quarterly basis. Yes.
Perfect. So about every quarter or so, this information.
Yes, roughly about every quarter. Close to the beginning or the first month of every quarter, we try to ensure that this website gets updated.
All right.
And that's the same case.
I was taking notes. What's that?
Yeah, and that's the same case with the construction cost index website also. It's going to be updated on the first end of the first month of every quarter, because the projects that are opened in a given quarter, the last third month of a given quarter, they get awarded typically on the first month of the new quarter, right? So we need to be able to get that information to be able to make a best guess, the latest construction cost index data, So we make this update on a quarterly basis, typically on the end of the first month of every fiscal year quarter.
Perfect. Excellent. There is a question, are we going to post the presentation? So Shiva, are you able to share your slide deck with us?
Yes. I'll be happy to share that information, the PowerPoint with you, Rebecca, after the meeting. Yeah, I can share.
Absolutely. So yes, everybody that's registered for this workshop will get the recording, all the slide decks, all the links, everything we can provide you. That was a ton of information. All right, I will ask our attendees if you have any questions for Shiva, please do drop them in the chat or the Q&A. We are coming up on the end of our workshop. All right, I don't see any questions popping up. So Shiva, I will say thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your expertise. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
I'll stay here for just a moment if anybody's still typing furiously on their questions. If nothing else, we will say thank you so much for spending a little bit of your Tuesday morning with us. And again, we will send out the recording. We will send out all the slide decks, all the links, everything we can possibly give all of our attendees and everyone who wasn't able to watch it live. Certainly want to have the ability to watch it at your leisure, at your convenience. All right. Thank you again. We will have our Q1 2025 topic coming out probably after the first of the year. Have a fantastic rest of your year and a great holiday season.